My stepmother Diane spent 2 years draining my bank account to build her boutique, then shattered what was left of my heart with one smug toast. That night, I slipped away with the evidence tucked under my arm and started dismantling everything she'd built, piece by piece, until the world finally saw the real parasite. It all started at Christmas dinner. "I'll pack tonight," I said, my voice steady despite the quake inside me. Diane laughed. A brittle sound. "Grow up, Kayla. You can't cling forever." I glanced at my brother, who shrank into his hoodie, pretending not to hear. Only the dog, curled under the table, dared meet my eyes. Dad muttered something about needing fresh air and disappeared onto the porch. Typical. I stood up and turned toward the hallway without another word. Diane called after me, voice syrupy. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." Upstairs, the walls of my childhood bedroom stared back, hollow and pale. No trophies, no photos, just a cracked mirror and an unmade bed. I yanked my suitcase from under the bed, its wheels rattling like tiny chains. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, and a battered old ledger tucked at the back of the closet. As I packed, I found the manila folder tucked inside the ledger. I hadn't seen it in months. Receipts, wire transfers, invoices, evidence of every dollar I had funneled into Diane's damn boutique. Proof I'd built her little empire while she called me a burden. I smiled, sharp and cold. They thought I'd leave with nothing but my suitcase. As I zipped the bag shut, I texted Marcy, my best friend. "Can I crash at your place a few days?" 3 dots danced for a second, then, "Of course, come whenever." I pocketed the folder, feeling the edges poke against my ribs like a secret weapon. Downstairs, Diane's laughter floated up the staircase, brittle and smug. As I rolled my suitcase down the hallway, I caught Dad's silhouette outside through the window. He lit a cigarette, shoulders hunched, back turned. The last thing I saw before stepping into the cold night was Diane toasting herself in the dining room mirror. She thought she'd erased me. I closed the door softly behind me, snowflakes whispering against the porch rail. I gripped the suitcase handle tighter. Diane had no idea. Her future sat in the folder pressed tight against my chest. Marcy's porch light blinked through the falling snow as I dragged my suitcase up the front steps. She opened the door before I knocked, wrapping me in a tight hug. "You smell like drama," she joked softly, ushering me inside. I laughed, but it cracked halfway out. We curled up on her worn couch, sipping cocoa, the folder heavy on my lap. "You gonna tell me what happened?" she asked, nudging my knee. I flipped the folder open, letting the first crumpled invoice slide out. 2 years ago, Diane had cornered me in this very living room. Her fake tears had glistened under the lamp. "Kayla, honey, you're so good with money. I just need a little help to get started." She'd promised it would be a short-term loan. She even made a handwritten repayment schedule, neat as a third-grader's science project. I was 25, juggling freelance gigs, barely scraping by. But when Diane clasped my hands, pretending I was her daughter, I fell for it. At first, it was little things. $800 here for merchandise, $1,500 there for rent. She always paid me back, until she didn't. By the 6th month, the payments got delayed, and I picked up a second job to cover both our bills. Nobody else knew. Not Dad, not my friends, just me and Diane. I could have pulled the plug, but every time I tried, Diane would show up at my door, red-eyed, whispering how much she needed me. "You're the only one who believes in me." And damn it, I had believed her. Until tonight. Until she clinked her glass and called me a leech in front of my entire family. I slid a worn email printout across the coffee table toward Marcy. She scanned it quickly, eyebrows lifting. "Wait," she said, tapping a line. "This says you're the guarantor on her lease?" I nodded, throat tight. "And you never told your dad?" she asked. "No point," I said, voice rough. "He doesn't fight her. He never has." Marcy leaned back, crossing her arms. "You realize she screwed without you, right?" The snow hissed against the window. I smiled grimly. "I'm counting on it." Outside, the winter wind howled like an omen. Inside, I made a silent vow. If Diane wanted a war, I'd fight it smart, silent, and deadly. The next morning, I sat at Marcy's kitchen table, laptop open, coffee growing cold beside me. I pulled up my banking apps first. Every auto payment tied to Diane's boutique, vendor invoices, lease supplements, utilities, clicked into view. One by one, I canceled them all. Each confirmation email felt like a nail in the coffin. Next, I opened my receipts folder. Years of transfers, rent deposits, emergency supply orders I had covered without a second thought. I spent hours organizing them into tidy PDFs. At noon, I called an attorney recommended by one of my freelance clients, Mr. Jameson, who specialized in financial disputes. His receptionist squeezed me into a last-minute appointment for Friday. "Bring everything," she said briskly. "Proof, emails, payment history." I closed my laptop, heart hammering against my ribs. From my duffel bag, I pulled the lease Diane made me sign 2 years ago. Tiny print at the bottom, guarantor, Kayla Benton. I traced the signature with my finger. If the boutique defaulted, the landlord could come after me. Unless I acted first. Marcy peered over her coffee mug. "You sure you want to open this can of worms?" I zipped the folder closed. "Worms are already out," I said. "I'm just pointing at them." That night, tucked under Marcy's spare quilt, I drafted an email to the landlord. Effective immediately, I withdraw financial responsibility for Luxe Nest Boutique due to undisclosed financial instability and breach of private agreement. My hand shook a little hitting send, but when the message whooshed away, a strange calm settled over me. Let Diane explain it when the rent check bounced. A week later, a tiny slip of fate arrived. Ava, one of Diane's boutique employees, texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, is it normal for paychecks to, bounce?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I typed back carefully. "No." "Why?" 3 dots blinked. Then, mine did. And Maddie's. Diane said it's just bank error. But customers are noticing weird stuff too. I dropped my phone onto the bed, a slow smile spreading across my face. The dominoes had started falling. And Diane, queen of appearances, wouldn't even see the collapse until the ground was gone beneath her heels. 2 weeks later, Marcy and I sipped burnt coffee from paper cups, sitting in her beat-up Civic outside Luxe Nest. I pulled my beanie lower over my ears, heart thudding. Through the boutique's glass doors, Diane fluttered around like a frantic bluebird. Half the shelves were bare. A woman in a long beige coat argued with her at the counter, flapping a paper in Diane's face. Probably a supplier invoice. Marcy leaned closer to the windshield. "Is that the flower lady from downtown?" I nodded. Diane had once bragged she landed that florist's account. Prestige partnerships, she called them. Now the florist's face was redder than her lipstick. I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over Ava's number. I tapped out a quick message. "Hearing anything else about paychecks?" The reply came fast. "Yup." 2 more bounced. And someone filed a complaint with the labor board. I exhaled, watching my breath fog up the cold glass. Inside the boutique, Diane's smile cracked like a frozen river underfoot. She shoved a clipboard toward the florist. Desperate. The florist shook her head, turned on her heel, and left, shoulders stiff. Marcy whistled low under her breath. "If I had popcorn," she murmured, "I'd be throwing it at the window." I laughed once, sharp and humorless. It wasn't about the boutique falling apart. It was about what the collapse revealed, how fragile Diane's little kingdom had always been. My phone buzzed again. "Ava, P.S. I overheard Diane say something about borrowing against next month's rent. Sound bad?" I showed Marcy the text. She let out a slow whistle. "Borrowing from future money to pay today's bills? That's death spiral stuff." I nodded, tucking the phone back into my pocket. Diane's boutique wasn't just cracking, it was sinking. And soon, everyone in town would know the truth. The woman who had called me a leech had been leeching off me, and the whole damn town, since day one. I leaned back against the seat, letting the warmth of victory creep into my bones. Not yet, I told myself. Not until she falls in front of everyone who ever clapped for her. 3 nights later, I sat cross-legged on Marcy's couch, laptop glowing against the dark. Ava's text blinked on my screen. "Hey, heads up. Diane's planning a big spring reveal event, this Saturday. VIP only. Press coming too." I grinned, tapping my fingers against the keyboard. Perfect. Diane's obsession with status meant she'd bet everything on that night. Prestige, future investors, survival. Marcy looked over her magazine. You're gonna crash it, right? I shook my head slowly. Not crash it, I said. Hijack it. I forwarded Ava's text to Mr. Jameson, my lawyer. He responded within minutes. Good timing. I've filed the liens. Court-approved notices can be served during public gatherings, by special request. I stared at the words, heart thudding so hard it shook the couch under me. Diane was about to get served, in front of the town's social elite. Marcy tossed her magazine aside. You're like a Bond villain, but with spreadsheets. I laughed, covering my face. I wasn't proud of the thrill pulsing through me. But damn, it felt good to finally play offense. Saturday came fast. Marcy and I parked across the street from Luck's Nest just after sunset. Twinkle lights framed the boutique windows. Inside, Diane floated from guest to guest, her fake designer heels clicking across the marble tiles. She wore a cream dress that looked suspiciously new, probably bought with the last of her emergency fund. Ava waved at me through the glass, subtle and quick. I nodded. Inside, a man in a gray suit approached Diane, something white clutched in his hand. My breath fogged the car window. Marcy grabbed my sleeve. That's him! That's the process server! The server leaned in, speaking low. Diane smiled, reaching for the paper automatically. For a second, the scene hung frozen. Christmas lights twinkling, champagne flutes raised, cameras flashing. Then Diane's face crumpled. Pure, ugly confusion twisted her mouth before she caught herself. But it was too late. The photographers noticed. So did the mayor's wife. Gasps rippled through the boutique like a stone hitting a frozen lake. Marcy let out a low whistle. Game over. I grinned into my coffee cup, watching my stepmother drown under the weight of her own lies. And the night was just getting started. By Monday morning, Luck's Nest's glass doors were taped shut. A crude, closed for renovation sign dangled from the handle, flapping weakly in the spring wind. Marcy and I drove past on the way to her gym. She slowed down, just enough for us to gawk. 3 notices were plastered across the window, 1 from the county clerk, 2 from creditors, all of them stamped in bold red ink. Marcy whistled low. That renovation must involve a bankruptcy court. I leaned my forehead against the passenger window, smiling grimly. The town's gossip mill worked faster than the internet. By lunch, I was getting texts from old high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, isn't that your stepmom's place? Yo, I heard Luck's Nest went under. Crazy! Thought Diane was rich. What happened? I ignored most of them. Instead, I called Mr. Jameson's office. His assistant answered after 2 rings. Mr. Jameson says the boutique's leaseholder has 30 days to respond before formal asset seizure begins, she said crisply. Thanks, I said, voice steady. I hung up, pressing the phone against my chest. Outside, Diane's perfect world had shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, and I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, Dad called. I stared at the screen for a long minute, thumb hovering. Finally, I answered. Kayla, he said, voice strained. I didn't know. My jaw tightened. You didn't want to know, I corrected quietly. On the other end, I heard the rattle of ice cubes in a glass. He sighed, deep and broken. She said you were taking advantage, that you owed her for everything. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Everything she had, I said slowly, was paid for with my money. Silence. Heavy. Ugly. Finally, he rasped. What can I do? I laughed softly. Nothing. Nothing could glue back the years he sat silent while Diane fed on everything I built. You'll figure it out, I said, voice gentle but final. I ended the call without waiting for his reply. Outside Marcy's window, the clouds peeled back, letting a thin, pale sunlight through. It didn't warm much, but it was light, and sometimes, light was enough. 2 months later, I stood in the middle of my new condo, barefoot on cool hardwood floors. It wasn't big. 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a view of the river if you leaned over the balcony just right. But it was mine. Bought outright. No loans, no cosigners, no strings tied to anyone else's dreams. Marcy lugged a box through the door, grunting. Girl, she puffed, setting it down. Your book collection is officially my new gym membership. I laughed. wiping sweat from my forehead with my sleeve. Sunlight poured through the windows, painting everything gold. I opened the last box, labeled Important, and pulled out the manila folder. The same one I'd clutched the night Diane threw me away. Now, the papers inside were just trophies, receipts of a battle fought and won. I tucked the folder into the back of my closet, under a basket of scarves. Out of sight, out of mind. I had bigger plans now. Within weeks of LuxNest's collapse, I quietly launched a side hustle. Private financial consulting for women starting small businesses. No fancy offices, no ads, just word of mouth, one honest success story at a time. First it was Ava, trying to open her own floral shop. Then Maddie, launching a handmade jewelry brand. Each contract I signed felt like a tiny rebellion against every Diane who had ever lied, exploited, and glittered their way to the top. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to rebuild something better. One Saturday afternoon, after coaching a client through her first profit margin breakdown, I celebrated with a giant soft pretzel and a root beer on the balcony. The city sprawled below, messy and alive. I toasted the skyline with my plastic cup. "Here's to the ones who don't get invited to the table," I muttered, smiling. "And here's to building our own damn tables." The wind tugged at my hair, cool and clean. Just then, my phone buzzed. "Ava, you will not believe where I just saw Diane." I blinked, curiosity prickling up my spine. Before I could reply, a second message popped in. "Mall. Retail job. Folding sweaters. Swear to God." I laughed so hard I spilled root beer on my jeans. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. The mall smelled like warm pretzels and cheap perfume. Marcy and I wandered through the crowd, pretending to browse. "Third floor," she whispered, nudging my arm, "near the food court." I adjusted my tote bag, heart pounding against my ribs. I wasn't nervous, just ready. Ready to see the end of the woman who had once held my life hostage with a credit card smile. We rounded the corner by the escalators, and there she was, Diane, wearing a stiff maroon polo with a shiny name tag. Diane, floor-led. She knelt beside a messy table of discount sweaters, refolding them with furious little jerks. Her makeup was thinner, her hair pulled back too tight, and her shoes, once red-soled and loud, were now scuffed black flats. Marcy sucked in a sharp breath beside me. "She looks different," she whispered. I nodded, feeling something heavy and strange settle in my chest. Not triumph, not pity, just finality. Diane didn't see me at first. She was too busy barking instructions at a teenage employee who looked one meltdown away from quitting. I drifted closer, trailing my fingers along a rack of clearance jeans. Then she looked up. Her eyes locked on mine. Recognition hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened, just a little, but no words came out. I smiled politely. Not cruel, not smug, just polite, like I was a stranger in the checkout line. She straightened slowly, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. For one tiny second, I thought she might say something. An apology, a snarl, anything. Instead, she ducked her head and turned away, pretending to adjust a crooked price tag. Marcy grabbed my hand under the table. "Let's go," she murmured. I nodded, turning my back on Diane without hesitation. As we walked toward the escalators, I caught sight of a cardboard sign posted near the fitting rooms. No returns, no refunds. I almost laughed. Diane had spent her life trading people like merchandise. Now nobody was offering refunds for the mess she made. The air felt sweeter as we rode the escalator down, leaving her behind. I didn't owe her anger. I didn't owe her forgiveness. I owed myself peace. And damn it, I was finally collecting. The email hit my inbox late Tuesday night. Subject line, "Unfortunate allegations. Please respond." I blinked, setting my tea down too hard on the table. The sender, Geneva Walsh, a name I hadn't heard in years. Diane's old friend. A woman who once called me sweet but simple while sipping free champagne at boutique openings. I opened it, stomach already sinking. "Kayla, given the recent collapse of LuxNest, certain parties are suggesting financial sabotage. Allegations have been made regarding your prior involvement in the business's operations. We're investigating and would appreciate your cooperation." Sabotage? I barked a humorless laugh into the empty kitchen. Marcy, curled up on the couch, peeked over her book. Trouble? I shoved the laptop toward her. She read fast, eyebrows climbing with every line. Wow, she said, flipping the screen back toward me. They're trying to paint you as the reason Luck's Nest went down? I nodded, jaw clenching. Of course Diane wouldn't go down quietly. No, she'd drag everyone she could into the mud with her, even the person who kept her boutique breathing longer than it deserved. I cracked my knuckles, thinking fast. The screenshots, the canceled payments, the emails from Diane begging for just one more favor, the financial timeline. Mr. Jameson had copies of everything. I wasn't scared, but I was angry. Angry that even now Diane's pride would rather invent villains than own the simple truth. You're not gonna let her twist this, right? Marcy asked, voice sharp. I smiled, slow and sure. Not a chance. I pulled up Mr. Jameson's contact, firing off a short email. New wrinkle. Diane's cronies sniffing around. Can we prep a formal rebuttal package? His reply came back in minutes. Already ahead of you. File ready, let me know if they push further. I closed the laptop gently, a strange calm washing over me. If they wanted to open the ledger on who really propped up Luck's Nest, I'd show them every damn page. And this time, it would be public. I sipped my tea, letting the bitterness burn sweet across my tongue. Diane wasn't just losing her boutique. She was about to lose the narrative too. Friday afternoon, I met Geneva Walsh at a sterile coffee shop across town. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Geneva sat stiffly by the window, a pale blue blazer stretched too tight across her shoulders. She didn't stand when I approached, just waved two fingers toward the empty chair. I sat down, crossing my legs carefully. Geneva clicked her pen twice, setting a slim leather folder between us. We've received concerning reports, she said, voice clipped, suggesting you mishandled funds tied to Luck's Nest's collapse. I smiled, slow and deliberate. From whom? I asked. She blinked, clearly not expecting pushback. I'm not at liberty. Diane, I interrupted, soft and certain. Geneva's mouth pinched. I pulled a manila envelope from my tote and placed it on the table. Before you embarrass yourself further, I said, keeping my voice even, you might want to see this. I slid it toward her. Inside, screenshots of payment receipts, canceled auto-pay notices, the original lease paperwork showing Diane's dependence on my finances, and the killer, an email from Diane herself, dated last fall, thanking me for keeping the lights on. Geneva flipped through the pages, her face draining paler with each one. When she finally looked up, her voice wobbled. This paints a very different picture. I shrugged lightly. It paints the picture. I let the silence stretch between us, let her sit with it. Finally, Geneva clicked her folder shut. I'll update the committee. I sipped my lukewarm coffee, pretending not to notice the tremor in her hand. As I stood to leave, I paused, leaning in just enough to make her blink. You tell Diane, I said quietly. The next time she tries to rewrite history, I'll be ready, with receipts. I turned on my heel and walked out, the little bell above the door jingling sweetly. Outside, the late afternoon sun lit up the pavement, golden and wide. I tilted my face up into it, breathing deep. It tasted like something I'd almost forgotten. Freedom. And this time, no one was strong enough to steal it back. 3 days later, the envelope showed up on my doorstep. No return address. Just my name, written in a rushed, slanted scrawl I recognized instantly. Diane. I carried it inside like it might explode, setting it on the kitchen counter. Marcy leaned against the fridge, arms folded. You gonna open it? I nodded once, slicing the top open with a butter knife. Inside was a single sheet of thick cream paper. A proposal. Handwritten. Dear Kayla, we've both made mistakes. Luck's Nest was important to both of us. If you agree to publicly endorse my new venture, I can guarantee we both benefit. No hard feelings. Let's move forward together. I stared at the words, a slow burn rising behind my ribs. New venture? Benefit? Diane still thought this was a negotiation. Still thought I could be bought. Still thought her shame could be cleaned up if I just smiled nicely for the cameras one more time. Marcy snatched the paper, scanning it fast. Her jaw dropped. She's insane, she hissed. She's trying to use your name to rebuild her brand." I laughed. It burst out sharp and full, rattling around the kitchen tiles. "No," I said, wiping my eyes. "She's trying to survive the only way she knows, standing on somebody else's shoulders." I picked up the paper, folding it neatly back into the envelope. Then I grabbed my phone and snapped a clean photo of the whole thing. Documentation. In case she tried anything slimy down the road. I dropped the envelope into the trash with a satisfying thud. "No response?" Marcy asked. I shook my head. "None," I said. Diane had written me out of her life the night she clinked her champagne glass and called me a leech. She didn't get to rewrite the ending now just because she needed a new ladder to climb. I poured myself a cup of coffee, steady hands, calm heart. Outside, spring pushed stubborn green shoots through the cracks in the sidewalk. Life, relentless and pure, moving forward no matter who tried to claw it back. I had no intention of looking over my shoulder, not for Diane, not for anyone. 2 weeks later, I was deep into a spreadsheet for a new client when an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. Instinct prickled the back of my neck. I let it ring out. 30 seconds later, a voicemail popped up. I hesitated, then hit play. Diane's voice, low and syrupy. "Kayla, it's Diane. I heard about your new business. Maybe we could meet. I could use your expertise." She ended with a soft laugh like it was all a misunderstanding, like we were old friends sharing jokes over lattes. I stared at the wall for a full minute, breathing in and out. It wasn't rage, it wasn't fear, it was a simple, heavy sadness. Because Diane didn't want reconciliation. She wanted access, a new angle, another bridge to cross until she found someone else to drain. Marcy peeked into the office, eyebrow raised. "You okay?" I nodded, tapping the voicemail into the archive without another word. "No call back," I said. Not angry, not bitter, just done. Really done. Later that night, I met Ava and Maddie for burgers downtown. We laughed over soggy fries and swapped stories about clients who thought QuickBooks was a sci-fi movie. It was ordinary, simple, and it felt like a revolution. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes, opened the balcony door, and sat on the floor with a notebook in my lap. I scribbled a simple line at the top of a clean page. Rules for my future. No partnerships without contracts, no family favors without boundaries. No apologies for protecting my peace, no more carrying anyone who won't walk themselves. I underlined the last one twice. Hard. The breeze fluttered the page, cool against my knees. Somewhere out there, Diane was folding sweaters under fluorescent lights, dreaming up her next scheme. But she wasn't my problem anymore. Not my anchor, not my burden, not my guilt. My future was mine. All mine. The first time I saw Diane again in public was pure accident. I was browsing through a Saturday farmer's market downtown, tote bag swinging against my hip, when I spotted her. She stood near a battered pop-up booth selling cheap scarves. Same stiff maroon uniform, same name tag, only this time she wasn't folding sweaters. She was handing out flyers. Her eyes were dull, her mouth set in a thin, tired line. I froze by a crate of honey jars, heart hammering. Marcy beside me muttered under her breath, "Do we duck and run, or—" I shook my head slowly. No need. Diane hadn't seen me yet. She was too busy arguing with a woman clutching a crumpled flyer, waving it angrily. From the bits I caught, false, advertisement, no returns policy, management, refusing refunds. Same game, different field. Diane stepped back, flustered, her voice rising just high enough to draw attention from a small crowd. People started murmuring, exchanging pointed glances. Someone pulled out a phone, probably recording. Marcy slipped her hand through my elbow, tugging gently. "Come on," she said. "You don't owe her a front row seat." I nodded once, tearing my eyes away. As we melted back into the crowd, I felt the old urge crawl up my spine, the desperate instinct to fix things, to step in, to save. But I shoved it down, hard. This wasn't my storm anymore. If Diane drowned, it was in waters she chose. I bought a jar of lavender honey from a booth near the exit, the vendor smiling warmly. "New beginnings," she said, handing me the bag. I smiled back, clutching it tight. Yeah. New beginnings. Behind me, the raised voices faded into the marketplace buzz. Ahead of me, sunlight spilled across the sidewalks, hot and wide and endless. I adjusted my bag, lifting my chin. One step forward, then another. No glancing back. No rescue missions. Not this time. That night, as I curled up with my laptop, a new email slid into my inbox. Subject line: Urgent, investigation request. Lux Nest financial irregularities. My stomach flipped. Sender: Mr. Lasky, Senior Loan Officer. The first line of his message burned into my brain. We've uncovered additional ledgers tied to Lux Nest under your guarantor signature. We need to meet immediately. I sat there frozen, heart hammering. Diane wasn't just sinking alone. She was still tethered. To me.